welcome to video 3. So I understand by the time you watch this video you would have done some of your own analysis of the fable. So today I want to show you how I would analyze the fable myself, and maybe we can all learn from it. I will try to make it a little bit reflective and interactive. So, and maybe also Mr. Lukman may stop the video and try to get responses from you before I produce my response, so to make it a bit more interesting for everybody. Now, we are starting with fables because they are short. Texts are very similar. It doesn't matter whether it's a newspaper or academic paper. They're very similar because all of them are structured to achieve a purpose, right? So in some sense, they're very similar. So we're starting with a short text to then later on generalize when we read texts which are a little bit more complex. Okay, so let's have fun with the fable and let's learn some tools for analysis so we can apply them to other texts. So we have a little bit of a winter here on the picture. Some of you who have actually understood already the fable, you know why. Okay, so here's the fable. I didn't translate it, Google Translate did that, so I hope you have changed it by now and adjusted. So the idea was in tutorial 2 or in the video 2 to take this text and start deleting the things we didn't want to see. We didn't think were needed in the fable. So I've done my deleting. And now we have a little bit of work ahead of us to see what happened after I've deleted things. So what I might do is to copy this slide and make the page a little bit less interesting. So we will remove the grasshopper. We will take the text. We will, put it like this, remove some spaces here, and this will give us a little bit of room here for analysis. So to do that, I might create a text box for myself and see what happens. Okay. So what did I do? I might copy this again. Okay, so what happened? I have removed this. So we had a grasshopper was hopping about. Do you like that sentence? It's good enough, right? It has everything that a grammatically constructed sentence should have, which is the verb and the noun. A grasshopper was hopping about. Perfectly good sentence. An ant passed by, bearing along an ear of corn. So once we deleted all these things, did that help us understand the sentence better? Do we know why the ant was bearing an ear of corn? Not really, right? Because we have a grasshopper was hopping and there's this ant carrying a bit of a corn with it, right? We kind of, well, the sentences are grammatically correct, but we don't really know yet what's a big deal, right? We move on, okay? So let's have a look. So Why not come and chat with me, says the grasshopper. Well, yeah, instead of toiling and moiling in that way, we could remove that, right? So actually I might keep it this way. So we could remove it because it made no difference to the sentence whether this particular addition was there or not, right? We could easily say, why not come and chat with me, said the grasshopper. I am helping to lay up food for the winter, said the ant, and recommend you do the same. Oh, it's for the winter. Once we removed the summer, we didn't know what was going on until here the ant told us. It was for the winter, which means we now, as a reader, had to, once we removed summer from here, we now had to guess. The situation was happening in summer, right? So once we remove this, we don't know when the ant was carrying the corn, right? Not until how many lines? 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4th line. So, oh my God, that means that the summer thing was important because it was contrasting with the winter, right? It was happening in summer and the ant is talking, I recommend you do the same because winter will be here soon. Anyway, the grasshopper says, and that's all, I kept all the words here because I couldn't see anything that we could remove. Why bother about winter, said the grasshopper. We have got plenty of food at present. So now we know definitely, even though we have removed the summer, we now know perfectly well it's happening in summer, but we had to deduce it, right? So once we remove the summer from here, the reader is not sure when it was happening and has to do a little bit of work. This makes it hard on the reader. Okay, so what happened? He says, so why bother about winter? Plenty of food. The ant went on its way and continued its toil. Well, we could do without it, right? No need to. So when the winter came, the grasshopper had no food and found itself dying of hunger. Once the winter came. So can you notice, so what's happening here? We've got a few motifs here. We have a few motifs, right? Motifs means themes. So let's have a look. What themes do we have here? We have summer that is opposed by, okay, so summer, let's have a look. We might work with it a little bit differently. So we have summer, and that is opposed by winter. So the whole text is structured around two activities, something that you have to do in summer and something you do in winter, right? So what do we do in summer? Well, it depends, right? Depends whether you are a grasshopper or an ant. So if you are a grasshopper, you hop about. Oh, all right. What else you do? You chirp and sing to your heart's content, right? So all these things now make sense. We've removed them, but they were actually words that belonged to summer. They actually belonged to the grasshopper, right? So we have grasshopper and an ant. So we just put them here. Then we have ant, the ant. And what is here we have, so if you're a grasshopper, in summer, so now maybe we do like this. summer, and if you're a grasshopper, you hop around. If you are an ant, what do you do? What do you do when you're an ant? You create supplies for winter, right? To put it into your pantry. Pantry is that where you hide your supplies. So if you're an ant, you bear with great toil your supplies. So here's the word. Oh my God. But you don't just carry your corn, you carry it with great toil. What does that mean? With a lot of difficulty. Oh, really? With a lot of difficulty. So what we have here, look at this. We've got great toil opposed to chirping and singing. Okay, so we have summer, we'll underline. So we have two big contrasts, right? Two big contrasts, summer, winter. And then we have two different behaviors. So the grasshopper and an ant. Two different behaviors for two different goals. So if you're a grasshopper, in summer you hop about. Okay, so let's put some color on it. But if you're an ant, you carry supplies. If you're a grasshopper in summer, you chirp and sing to your heart's content, right? So let's make it a little bit, maybe we'll make it red. But if you're an ant, you work hard, right? You work with great toil. What other words we can put here? Look at that. The grasshopper says, why not come and chat with me? Why didn't the grasshopper say, why not come and talk to me? It has a different meaning, doesn't it? So chat means what? It's more relaxed, right? It's kind of like, yeah, there's no reason. This is just to socialize, right? You chat when you just socialize. Talk is a little bit, could be about anything. Could be also about business, but chat, it's rather to socialize, relax. But what does the ant do? Oh my God, look at this. We've crossed it out, but look what it says. See why these words were important? Because the grasshopper wanted to chat. But this chatting is now contrasted with toiling and moiling, right? So it's a phrase in English to reflect how hard one works. So what are we learning so far? Any ideas? Maybe Mr. Lukman can stop the video and we could discuss now. We've done a few lines here, but maybe Mr. Lukman can close the video, stop the video for a second, and you could discuss that. What have we learned so far? So as I see it, what we have learned so far, and I wonder what you have concluded from your little discussion, is that in order to plan a text, look at that, they actually created two contrasting things, right? The text has two contrasting elements, summer, winter. Attitude of the grasshopper in summer and the attitude of the end towards winter, right? So now what we have in each of those contrasting groups, we have different contrasting phrases: chirping and singing, bearing along with great toil, chirping to your heart's content, chatting. And here we have toiling and moiling. So what are we learning also? So that maybe this was needed. Why did we need actually to state it was in summer in a field? Because there's insects, right? So it's a lovely summery day in a field, which is kind of like relaxing. It's where people go for holidays usually, right? To countryside. So notice that grasshopper and an ant are not in a cellar of some city-based building where you have chimneys and cars. This is like this relaxing, beautiful place where people go on holidays. It's a field, it's a summer. And why do we have those words? For you to feel the relaxing bit of the story, right? Oh, it's just wonderful. If it is a field and if it is summer, all you want to do is just sleep or hop about if you're a grasshopper. But so actually we are learning that maybe that text was important to communicate that laziness that comes with summer and countryside, all of those things, right? So maybe we leave it in. What about this? We've cut it out, but if we put it back, what do these words communicate? They accentuate, right? They accentuate the happiness of the summer day in the countryside. It's just so lovely, and all you want to do is sleep or sing to your heart's content. What a carefree moment. Carefree, right? Carefree. Not the worry on your mind. Well, actually, what's happening to the ant? Is the ant carefree? No, what's the opposite? Worrisome, right? But the ant is not is not worrying about anything. The ant is planning, right? So sacrificing beautiful summer and planning for future, right? Sacrificing and planning. So sacrificing and planning, as opposed to feeling carefree. Look at that. We have a lovely set of opposites: summer, winter, carefree, planning and sacrificing. And then we have all these words put in here to communicate the emotion of relaxation, of joy. And that's what you do. You feel happy, you want to sing. It's the joy that comes with summer and a good day. Remember, this is a story that comes from Europe, and in Europe it's cold in winter and warm in summer. So maybe in Indonesia you may not worry too much about summer, winter, but in Europe you do. And summers are looked forward to because it's when we have a break from winter. So what are we learning so far? What we are learning that words like in a field one summer's day, chirping and singing, they were needed. They were needed because what they did, they communicated the feeling of joy and relaxation, right? So they were adding emotion to the sentence. Once we removed the time and the feeling is here to summer, and the field, it's a relaxation. When we remove them, the sentence didn't communicate much. A grasshopper was hopping about, right? So you didn't feel connected. You were just wondering, so what will happen next, right? So when we added these bits, you really felt the joy of summer, right? Ah, chirping, singing, oh, it's a field, it's a countryside, it's just beautiful. So, yeah, so sometimes what looks grammatically correct is not enough in a sentence. We have to add some more words in order for the text to communicate the feeling of summer, and as a result, the difficulty that summer presents. Because who wants to work on a beautiful summer's day? Everybody wants to relax, right? So we needed to communicate the joy, the relaxation, so that you could actually appreciate how hard the ant was working. Amazing, isn't it? So people put words. So we have a main body of a sentence, and then we have things around it to reveal or to communicate summer, right? Summer is about relaxation, it's about joy, it's definitely not about work. But if you don't work in summer and all you do is being carefree, you may lose at the end. So look at that. The ant went away on its way. The sentence again could have stayed as it is now, right? We could have had it this way. But what did the author did? And continued its toil. Oh my God, continued its toil. We're just gonna put it here as another group. Right? So it all belongs here to the group of winter. Even though the story is in summer, but it is about planning for winter and sacrificing the good times because you need to plan. So all of these words communicate the importance of planning, right? For winter. So winter means you have to plan for it, you need to work with great toil, you have to toil and moil, right? That's what winter means. What does summer mean? Well, summer means you just want to hop about, you want to chirp, you want to sing to your heart's content, you want to be carefree. But if you do not plan and if you do not sacrifice, what happens? Well, what happens is, so now we have this here, so we know that the author put it in here to accentuate the reason why the ant was working, right? That planning, the ant is planning forward. So it went away, but it didn't just go away from that grasshopper. It actually continued its toil. And when the winter came, that's why it was important to put that summer here, because we are opposing it, right? Summer here, winter here. And when the winter came, the grasshopper now felt the implications of winter, right? All these words are here good. And look at that. The ants were distributing every day corn and grain from the stores they had collected in the summer. So that summer, working hard. Summer's day, grasshopper hopping, they were collecting stuff for summer. So the author again reminds us continuously that the grasshopper here has no food, but not because the ants have it, but because the ants worked for it. So summer, winter, hopping, collecting food. Isn't it amazing how lovely people organize texts and choose the right words for us to have pleasure reading this? And had we not analyzed the text, we wouldn't have known that we would have thought that the story was about the grasshopper and the ant, but it isn't. The grasshopper and the ant are not the main characters. What's the main characters in this fable? Who is it? What is the main character, or who is the main character? That's something to think about. Maybe Mr. Lukman will stop the video for a moment and maybe you can think about it. As I see it myself, the main characters are not summer and winter, they just contrast, right? And what does the summer and winter help us to contrast? They help us contrast character qualities, being carefree versus planning and sacrificing, right? Planning and sacrificing. So there are people who can plan and sacrifice sometimes the good times in order to then collect rewards later on. But some people are carefree, they do not plan, they do not sacrifice, and what happens to them? It was dying of hunger, right? The grasshopper was dying of hunger. Notice here also just a little opposition here. So you have grasshopper seeing the ants having access to food every day. Every day. Right? So where will we put it here? We'll just put it here, right? So here, every day. And it is best, this is the moral, it is best to prepare for the days of necessity, right? So this is just me. I think that the author said every day they were sharing food from their pantries or from their stores every day, which means every day the grasshopper was feeling the pain, right? And you need to plan for those days. You need to plan. So there's a day here and day here, right? The theme is continued. So yeah, so the story is not just a story, right? We have two contrasting features here, which is being carefree or planning. And what happened? The grasshopper represents being carefree, right? And the ant represents those who plan and sacrifice. Then in order for us to feel what it means, summer, what summer means, the author was putting words in. Field, hopping, chirping, chatting, come to me. What else? Why bother? Why bother? We've got plenty. right? So all of these words belong here under the summer. But the person who created this fable also gave us words that belong to planning and sacrificing. Bearing along with great toil. That great toil had to be there, right? Because the ant was not just carrying the grain, but with great toil. It was heavy, it was difficult. The sun was shining. The ant was sweating. It was terrible, it was difficult, but nonetheless, right? So great toil means sacrifice, right? Difficult. I'll keep it crossed out so that you can see that this word, and I keep this one crossed out so you can see that a bad text didn't have to have those words in it, but a good text must have those words for us to understand the weight of sacrifice. Great toil, it's a summer's day, sweaty, difficult. An ear of corn is heavy, but it's twice as heavy in summer. So we might say here that in a fable, a grasshopper is a metaphor for carefree, right? A metaphor for carefree, whereas the ant is a metaphor for planning and sacrificing. So such a little text, such a short text, but we were able to see how much was happening in it. Firstly, by removing things we felt didn't have to be there, right? So I might just summarize a little bit. What did we learn? So a summary. I might remove this shadow here. Okay, summary. So what did we learn? Simple sentences do not communicate what don't they communicate? The emotion or feeling of the text, right? We needed to know it was in summer so that we could appreciate the sacrifice of the ant. So we needed field, summer's day, great toil, all of that was extremely important for us to, all these words were very important for us to understand the sacrifice. These words were very important too for us to understand how carefree the grasshopper was. So when we write, we use words, and we use those words in order to communicate with the audience emotion so that they feel what we want them to feel, right? So here we wanted people to feel what the grasshopper felt: happiness, joy, jumping, hopping, chatting. And we wanted also the reader to feel what the ant was feeling: great toil. What else? Toiling and moiling, all these words, right? Collected food throughout the winter, throughout the summer. You know, every day they had food now because they used this from the stores that they collected in summer. So texts do not just communicate a message, they communicate emotion. We want the reader to feel something. and we think of ways in which we can make that emotion felt. So simple sentences are not enough. Okay, so we will say are not enough. Yeah? Texts communicate emotion. We need to find words that help us do so. All right, what else did we learn? So simple sentences are not enough, all of that. We learned more. We learned that texts develop along contrasts, right? So now we use the fable and we wonder, do other texts develop along the contrasts? We will find out, but at this very moment, this is what we know, right? Texts develop contrasts, and each contrast has its own word groups, right? So summer, carefree, had singing, chirping, chatting, all of hopping, right? So these were the word groups that belonged to carefree, being carefree, and to summer. They belong to summer. To winter and planning and sacrificing, we had bearing, toiling and moiling, right? Days of necessity, things like that. So texts develop along contrasts, and each contrast has its own word groups. And those word groups communicate emotions. All right? They did here. Emotion of being carefree and emotion of working. So simple sentences wouldn't have done it. They don't do it. That's not enough. Texts communicate emotions. So they need word groups specifically created to do so. So these word groups belong to these two contrasts: good, bad, summer, winter, carefree, sacrificing, right? So we have a contrast: summer, winter, carefree, planning, and now we have word groups that communicate these emotions. The text didn't have to have those word groups, right? We eliminated them here. Great toil, summer's day, here, right? Didn't have to have them, but if it doesn't have them, it doesn't communicate the emotions, and then we are not connecting to this with the story, right? When we don't have those word groups that communicate emotions to express the contrast, when we don't have those word groups, we don't really understand the contrast, right? The contrast helped us understand that working in summer is difficult. The contrast helped us understand that being joyful in summer is what we understand, but it's not bringing rewards, right? So when you're chirping and singing and hopping around, you die of hunger. So yeah, so texts can be just made up of simple sentences, but then you miss on those words, those word groups that communicate the meaning of the contrast that a text is setting up. Okay, so I will finish for today. I asked you these questions last time in the other video we created earlier, so you may want to have a discussion now with Mr. Lukman and see what else you can add to the story that I just created. Maybe you have some questions. Maybe things did look differently when you had your story in Indonesian, right? So when we translated this fable into Indonesian, maybe similar things appeared or different things appear. So please, by all means, have a discussion with Mr. Lukman and summarize your learnings, and we will see how these things are now also happening in other texts, or if they are happening, maybe they are not, but I presume that they are, right? Because why? Because texts are written by human beings, and in order to communicate, every text is doing everything they can in order for you to understand the message, and to understand, you need to connect with the message. So anyway, we will record another video for another tutorial, and we will also have a discussion and see how all of this links to your assignments.